Hey, it's Tim and Guy, and today's April 20th. And apparently, listen, I don't know these
Of
things,
course you
but
don't. Of course you don't.
apparently April 20th is a thing, and it has something to do with the marijuana. And you're an expert in all things cannabis, so give our audience how to look at this cannabis space on April 20th,
You
Tim.
know, like it's 2020. The stuff's basically legal. I don't know why you have to act like, I mean, do you ever, get a little pull off of that thing back in
No,
the day?
no.
Come on. I
I'm being
mean,
honest with you. I never, no, it was never my thing. I mean, there were people smoking the marijuana all around me back in the early 80s, mid 80s, but I never partook.
okay, so you've not had your first dance with Mary Jane, let alone your last dance with Mary Jane. Great Tom Petty tune, by the way. And before we get into what's going on in the cannabis industry, you must have like a stoner movie. Give me your top three stoner movies, because I mean, even if you're not one, there's been some great movies.
Well,
Right?
I think Fast Times at Ridgemont High is well up there on the stoner movies. Is that fair? I was
Yeah,
never,
because
I never saw
Cult
the
Hero.
genius of Cheech and Chong. I went to one of those movies, Up in Smoke or something, and I walked out. It was a miserable experience. I think The Big Lebowski, they partake in those things. So I guess those two movies would do it for me.
Good choices. I mean, I think you have to put Cheech and Chong up there. Big Bam. Remember they had this album Big Bamboo that came out that had this huge rolling paper. Like literally, there was a giant rolling paper. Not that you know what to do with that, but some people did. Pineapple Express. Seth Rogen has become kind of a modern day ganj hero. And yeah, Bill and Ted's. I mean, as much as I know you're a big Keanu Reeves fan, especially from The Replacements. So we'll leave it there. Anyway, all right, let's talk about ganja. What's really going on out there? I think we've gone from this being a concept that everybody wanted to invest in, threw a lot of money at companies that raised a lot of money and frankly weren't good companies, and valuations have taken a massive tumble. Where are we today? I do think that the reason for investing in the sector, which is that it's a consumption story, it's a consumer product story, it's a story where there are real there's real efficacy, there's real wellness, there are people that are it's making a difference in their lives. But as an investor's perspective, there are real companies that actually have massive EBITDA. There are companies like Trulieve in Florida will have close to 200 million in adjusted EBITDA. There's tax issues for a lot of profitable companies, but I do think that the cannabis trade in the public markets looks kind of interesting. And Canopy Growth, which I talk about a lot just because it's the biggest name in the sector, it's also the name that in an uncertain environment for the capital markets, I have the most confidence in their balance sheet. I have the most confidence that there's a real management team running this company. This is a management team that came over from Constellation Brands, which is one of the most sophisticated consumer products in the world. Hope you're not running to the kitchen for some munchies tonight.
So my favorite Keanu Reeves movie is Point Break by far. He just crushed it. No?
Bodie, yeah, Swayze was incredible.
Swayze's incredible. He was the man, number one. And Lori Petty she did great work in that movie. And by the way, A League of Her Own. But I digress. What I'll say is, if you watch the crude oil market today, the front month May crude contract, you might as well have been smoking weed. I mean, I understand it's an aberration, but what do you make of the energy space here?
Look, I believe commodity markets always overshoot. And I believe what's going on in the technicals, we will bore people to tears talking about the technicals of the front contract versus the back contract and backwardation and contango, of which we're actually in contango, which here I am boring you right now, means months out in the future, oil's worth more than it is today. Some of this is a futures dynamic. Some of this is clearly there is so much oil that is basically sloshing around. They're hitting their tank tops, as I said. By the way, I can't even imagine what you look like in a tank top. And I think it's a case where you have supply issues that I think in the short to medium term are difficult. But to be investing in the equities right now for companies who have balance sheets who are being treated as if they're not going to be in business tomorrow, I think is kind of interesting. So whether you want to talk about your tank tops or whether you want to talk about what you're thinking about the energy sector, I'm sure people want to know.
Well, in terms of tank tops, what I'll tell you is Vladimir Putin seems to look pretty good in the tank top. And what I'll tell you is they're absolutely playing us like a fiddle in terms of the energy market along with the Saudis. So a lot of people will say that the Saudis and the Russians are in some spat with each other. I would say they're both working against us to try to cripple our energy industry. And quite frankly, they're being very successful. I think both sides are willing to lose the battle to win the war. And you know what? That's what appears to be what's happening right now. So I think we're getting played, pure and simple.
We're getting played. You've made a good call on that. I agree. But couldn't you also argue that sentiment here is so ridiculously negative? And I'm arguing offsides negative because, ultimately there will be a supply response. Aggregate oil demand goes up 3% every year, and I realize in the second quarter it won't, but it will start again. So these are the opportunities that I think if you pick companies that will be here tomorrow, this is exactly where long-term investors want to be.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think when you're looking at the big cap integrated names, like I think Chevron is probably the best out of the three, if you want to say Conoco, Phillips, Exxon, and Chevron. But I think you would admit as well, I mean, Chevron's gone from 50 to 85 in a month. Now you could say they never should have been that low in the first place, but a lot of these stocks have had ridiculous moves already. So my only point would be there was huge opportunity. I'm not saying anybody called it back then, but I think there's going to be a little bit of, in trader term, back and fill in some of these big cap energy names. And in terms of the tank top, maybe I'll wear one for tomorrow's show.
Yeah, I have a more important question. First of all, have you ever worn just like spandex pants to the gym? Would you? I mean,
when I bike, I bike in spandex. So the answer is yes.
Excuse me. Oh,
you okay?
Sorry. Not really, actually. I mean,
Well,
so
what should I bike in?
you will, whatever you wear underneath, maybe again, so you'll just put on a pair of spandex and start riding and let it
100%.
all kind of do what it does. Yeah.
100%. Hyundai keeping it 100, as they say. So yes, I have no
in
problem
public.
with it.
In public.
I've ridden outside in biking shorts, yes. Although, I'm not going into the quick check to get a Gatorade post ride. I'll come straight home.
Okay. All right. Well, look, it's good to know. I'm glad I'm not doing any Ironmen with you. Ironmen. But a guy like you probably needs to have as much freedom of movement as he can have, I guess.
And on that note, to quote another Tom Petty song, free falling. And we'll leave it at that.
Or free something else. Good night, guy.
Later.